radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Well. Good evening. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. It is Wednesday, October 18th, 2023. Let's do this, man. Our guest tonight is Richard Dolan. And now, here's the deal. Richard is late. He's not here yet. Talked to him a couple times today, email, and then showtime rolls around and he's not here. So I'm going to patiently wait for Richard to show up. It's pretty interesting. I've done so many shows with Richard over the years, and this is a first. So there you go. Everybody appreciates our friendship and where Richard and I are at and stuff. So this is strange, but the show must go on. So we start on time, and that's it. And I've got him right here. Well, I don't have him here yet, but I will see him when he pops in. It is very strange that let's see, sent me an email half hour ago. Yeah, it's right here. Literally saying, hey man, what's up? So anyway, waiting for Richard to pop in. And while we are doing that, I will say that it's been a great week. I just got back from Egypt, and Timothy Hogan on the show on Monday was amazing. Last night, of course, Daryl Anka, Bashar, what an amazing conversation that was last night. And they will both be, including Richard, who will be here shortly, all will be at Stairway to the Stars in Las Vegas, November 10th, 11th, and 12th. At the Luxor Hotel. The links for everything are below, including the discount code for you Fadernauts. That's in the links below. Get your tickets, and we will see you in Las Vegas. This is going to be amazing. We've got so many different things lined up for Stairway to the Stars. And we've got a dinner gala. We're giving away autographed guitars and other memorabilia. We've got some special surprise guests that are going to be there that night. And a couple of other amazing that we can't. Well, it's not. We're not going to. We've got some celebrities that are going to be there that have never done a conference like this before, and outside of our community, where you're going to go, whoa. So come in and hang out with us. Plus, on a Saturday night, we've got 4 buses. 4, I think 3 are sold out. All 4 will be sold out by then, November 11th, where we are going out to Area 51. We're going to the Little Alien. We're going to have a sky watch, and the Little Alien's going to stay open. We've got facilities that are being set up out there. We've got large screen TVs. And that's going to be great. So get yourself a seat on that bus. We're going to have a different researcher or speaker, celebrity types, on each bus for the ride out and the ride back. So you want to do that. This is a very cool, very unique opportunity for everyone. If you have never been out to the Little Alien in Rachel, Nevada. So all of that at Stairway to the Stars at the Luxor Hotel, November 10th, 11th, and 12th in Las Vegas. The links, again, are below, and there's a discount code there for you. All right. And also, don't forget to get your Fade to Black t-shirts, and 2 t-shirts. And one, was looking at this today. I'm so happy about this, so proud. It includes the Michael Oeming, right? The new Michael Oeming hand-drawn Fader Knot shirt. That's called the official Fader Knot now because it says official Fader Knot on it. Right there. So get your t-shirts. Everything includes shipping and they are autographed, and the links for them are below. 2 ways to get them. You can either order a shirt or you can get a Game Changer membership, which includes a shirt. So the links for all of that are below. All right. Still waiting for Richard. This is where we call him. Let's go. Dude, what's up? Watch this. It's going to go to voicemail. I'll just put it on speaker. Oh, maybe not. Maybe there's an emergency. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. It's funny, isn't it? Oh man, no answer. Richard.
Yes, I'm backstage. I was just about to text you. I don't know what the deal is. I used your link that you sent me in the email.
Oh, really? Maybe you are stand by. I'm going to send you another link.
Yeah, because I'm on a link that I don't think it was doing me any good. So
okay, come in. You're live on the air right now. Say hi to everybody. You're on speaker.
Hello, everybody.
I'm like, man, he's right. He's emailing me. We're texting. We're going back and forth.
Here's a new one.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to send you an
link. And I will be glad to be on the show.
Okay. Oh, yeah, Richard, thank you so much. All right, coming at you. All right, let's see here. You got to love it. This is live radio. All right, boom, send. Now, you know what I think he's got? I think he's got the link to the news from earlier today. That's what I think I sent him. He's probably sitting in the news going, it's not happening, man. Okay. You got to love live radio, man. This is great. Okay. Yeah, this is called live. This is live. When people go, is this live right now? I'll be watching the chat. Is this live? How live can it be? How live do you want it to be? All right. Okay, so he's not. Now it's correct. No matter what, now it's correct. Oh, there he is. Okay, Richard, you settled in? You want me to nod your head? Are you settled in? Is that a thumbs up? Let's just go straight to hey, no intro tonight, I guess.
Look, I'm really sorry about that. I honestly clicked your link. I think I was in my own backstage. Like I've got my own link for this thing, you know.
Did you see? Did you see the text? That they go from nice and cool to panicked.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. It's all right. Hey, man. You know how many interviews have we done? The answer is we don't know. It's been a buttload, right? Right? How many times have we had?
10 years ago.
Yeah. How many times have we had a snag? Like zero. So, it was bound to happen once.
This doesn't even count as a snag. Let's face it.
It doesn't.
It's only your show. Hey, let me just say, I was thinking about you earlier today, and I'm really always happy to be on this program with you because you're one of the hardest working people in our fun little community. I know you work your tail off, and it shows. And I'm just really proud that your show is as successful as it is, and I'm always happy to be on.
You
Have a
know,
good time.
yeah. And what I've always enjoyed is, and we've talked about this before in the past, but we have. It's weird. I'm not getting comments coming in.
Oh, by the way, happy birthday. A
Oh
little belated.
yeah.
Happy birthday.
60. Hey, do you remember? That's what I was going to talk about. Do you remember that? It doesn't matter where we were, but you and I sat and talked about getting old for like 3 hours in the sun one day.
I'm too old to remember that.
Two soon to be cranky old men, right? Just sitting around contemplating our own.
I'm going to give you the instruction manual. I've already been working that vibe. I'll send you my list of things to do.
Yeah, right. Are you going to be that guy? Are you going to be the guy walking down the street?
I'm already there. I'm in that. I live that dream. I shake my fist. I'm like Abraham Simpson now. I shake my fist at the clouds for no reason whatsoever at times.
Yeah, we earn the right. You know, and the other side of this coin is, which I never really did when I was younger, but if you're below the age of 40, okay, you haven't earned the right to bitch and complain.
Well, listen to this. Yeah.
You haven't. You can't be a cranky old man or a cranky old lady. Get off my lawn at the age of 40. You're a kid. You know, you got to get to where you and I are, where you get some
the thing
stripes.
is, like when you and I were in our 30s, we didn't want to hear that.
No, at all.
And I'm sure the people in their 30s don't want to hear that. People in their 20s, no one cares about them. But in their 30s.
Okay. Let's get it's weird. Comments aren't posting. And the stream is live. It's weird. The comments aren't posting. Huh. Oh, you know what? I'm going to check something out. Just for grins. Let's go to here.
Okay, so we are having a glitch.
No, the show's live. I'm going to there may be, but let me do this. Okay. No, we're no, we're fine. We're fine.
People just don't care.
Yeah. It's just
I'm like, Dolan again. Yeah, we've done this.
Yeah, it's just, I like to look over at the comments to see if somebody wants me to ask you something they want to interject. But my comments aren't.
We'll have much to talk about.
I kind of want to start here. This week, we've got Tim Burchett, who says they now have access to a skiff, right? And they are going to be able to sit down with David Grush and I guess, right, get the addresses, names, places, and stuff on these recovered craft and the the alien bodies, the biologics. He even, I think, used the word pilots, right, which I thought was pretty interesting. What do you think about that? Do you think that well, I want your comment on that, but is it too late for it? It's like you've shot a flare up, right? So anybody that would be on that list that's got something that would have an address is moved it. It's a shell game. Yeah, likely.
There's a few things that I do know about the congressional situation, and I'm not that I'm anyone important in this. I'm not, but I am privy to a couple of things, and I definitely know that these members of Congress, Burchett for sure, several others, genuinely care about this issue. For whatever crazy reason, they're taking a chance because there's a lot of other things on the agenda for Congress, and some of them are still pushing this matter, and I think that is commendable. As far as, and also, I mean, I think we have to come to terms with the fact that members of Congress, without a doubt, privately know that this is all real now. Like there's no more doubt among many of them. They know UFOs are real. They can call them UAP all they want. UFOs are real, and they are, I think, quite persuaded and convinced that we have ET tech or alien tech in our possession, and also bodies, or the biologics, as Grush called them. So I don't think they need a lot of convincing at this point. And I mean, I don't know for a fact that Burchett thinks that, but I would bet a lot of money that he does. And I think that a lot of these other members of Congress do as well. So I would think that their biggest issue is, they're going to want to move forward. They will want more hearings. They're going to want to move forward in a way that can cover their backsides on this. So I think they're going to want to have as much confirmable evidence as they can get. So whistleblowers are good. I think they should proceed with that. If they've got the 30 plus that Schellenberger in his article a couple of weeks ago talked about. I don't know if they're all aware of this. I'm not sure if all the members of Congress are actually on top of this. I don't really know. We're gonna have to find out.
Do you think that it's equal in both houses, the Senate and the House and Congress, where the concern is equal on both sides? And the other part of it is the Senate or the House, who has more strength and more authority? Because technically our founding fathers tried to make everything equal with checks and balances, right? And so there are advantages to each, and all the way to the executive branch too, as well, and judicial. But which would have the stronger juice card?
I would say the Senate's way more powerful in my view. The Senate's more powerful than the House. It's always been more prestigious, and it's way better to be a senator than a congressman for your political future. So I think it's the Senate. But you were asking about parties. I mean, you got Republicans and Democrats both who are pushing this forward. I mean, it looks to me that there's more on the Republican side.
Yeah, I feel that.
Forward. It absolutely does feel that way. But there are some Democrats who are. I think Jared Moskowitz is a Democrat. I think he's one of them.
Andre Carson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's several. Hell, they even had AOC getting in on the hearing with Rush a couple of months ago. And I thought, is this just like a lot of it you can see they just everyone wants the attention. Like this was a huge thing. And you have to assume that behind the scenes are all like, oh, there's a lot of cameras here. I'm going to get on camera. But she asked a couple of on-point questions. Most of the people in Congress actually asked some decent questions during that hearing. I was kind of surprised. They seemed like they were pretending to care, which was really nice to hear.
Who was the presidential candidate that said he had a UFO sighting and then he had to pull out of the race? Because of Dennis Kucinich.
Yeah.
It's not that kind. Yeah, that wasn't that long ago, and it's not that kind of party now, right? Where you can actually say these things out loud.
Yeah, this is the big sea change. I mean, in our public conversation, there's no question about it. I remember the whole Kucinich debacle very well. I bet a lot of listeners remember that. It wasn't that long ago. 15 years ago, and he was lampooned by all of the major media. Of course, they were looking for excuses to go after him. He was kind of a renegade Democrat. No one likes renegades. At least the establishment doesn't like renegades. So they were looking for a reason to get him out. But that was a perfect way. They just constantly made fun. The cartoons were out of control. They really made him look really bad. It was awful. I mean, the fact was, if anyone remembers this, Kucinich wasn't alone when he saw a UFO. I think it was 1982. And he was on the property of Shirley MacLaine, who was his friend. I think she was the godmother of one of his kids, something like that.
Yep.
And he was a guest at her I'm sure very lovely home, and he was with 2 other people.
In
And they all
Beverly
saw
Hills. It was
a
in Beverly Hills.
triangular craft. Was it
Yep.
that's where it was? Yeah, triangular craft. And the crazy thing is, I think he said that he felt some kind of telepathic connection with it, which that sunk his ship right away. But of course, you hear this all the time with witnesses. It's not unusual at all. But then the crazy thing is that in the aftermath of that, the other 2 witnesses came forward and said, "Yeah, we were there. That happened."
Yeah, and that was if that was during a debate.
Yeah,
I
they
think.
sprung it on. It was real dirty-handed, underhanded stuff.
Yeah. It was during a
Well,
debate.
look,
Yeah,
when you take on the establishment, they will pull out all the stops to take you out in any way possible. That's our system. We have a pretend democracy. So you have the democracy. The pretend part is essential, but the democracy part is what people want to believe. So you have to have. They can't have an actual democracy. That's unthinkable. So they have to have it as a pretend democracy. And that's what we have. We have a pretend democracy.
Today, right before showtime, actually, I'm going to pull up the headline. This is on CNN, and
that's always a good one.
Yeah, always a good
awesome.
one.
Everyone loves them.
But the headline is looks different on my phone. It says the headline is "The Pentagon are starting to take UFOs seriously." Right, that's the headline. So wow. So I clicked on it.
Oh, they're on board. 2023. Way to go, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Easy now. Easy. It's the media. It's all bad. But to see that, and what struck me is not the fact that mainstream media is on board. We know that now. But I think that there is a resistance to UAP. And that's people aren't going to click on that headline. I think the media knows that. Right? It's UFO, like you said earlier. It's UFOs, and we can't confuse the issue here. We have to stop and explain to somebody all the time what a UAP is. If you bring it up in a conversation, what is that? Well, it's a UFO. There.
I'm using UAP more and more. I mean, I resisted it for a while. I didn't really have a problem with it. I mean, UAP actually, I think that phrase was invented over 40 years ago, and it wasn't invented by the military. If someone can correct me, but I think it was developed by Dr. Richard Haynes, founder of NARCAP, the aviation group. I think he came up with it back around 1980. And
now, okay, I dare you to retitle your books UAPs in the national security state, and then put your money where your mouth is.
Hey, not on the National Security State series. No, that is what it is.
Exactly.
I'm doing other books. I've got other books, and I don't know. I don't think that I'm going to throw the UAP in there, but I mean, the thing is, I don't have a problem with UAP on one level, which is like, it's not hard, right, to understand why people would go to that if you're trying to open up a new conversation. In the establishment, the word UFOs, it's such a stigma. Yeah, we all know. So if you're trying to like do a little end run around that, you want to use a different phrase, be my guest. The only problem that I'm having is, I've said this a million times, and anyone who's listened to me is like, here we go again. But I just feel like the use of the phrase UAP in the context that it's been used has been, it's kind of siphoned out our history. It's taken the history out of the equation. So it feels to me as if, you know, to hear the media talk about it, to hear the Pentagon talk about it, this whole thing started in 2004 with the Nimitz encounter. That's what bothers me. And you know, I've been thinking this all along, like if the government were to have a UFO disclosure as opposed to a UAP disclosure, UFO, president comes out and says UFOs are real. People, that's going to mean something. But if they say there are these UAP, they can still kind of get away with this little pretend, which they do all the time, is like, we're going to pretend that we don't know what this is. We're going to pretend we're going to look into this for you people, and we'll get back to you because this is a brand new thing for us. We didn't have this in the 20th century. we didn't have these UAP. That's kind of the way that they're trying to play it. And that's, I mean, they're not explicitly saying that, but they're really, I think they are kind of saying that. And it just strikes me as disingenuous. So that's what I don't like about UAP as a phrase.
Yeah, I mean, the first time that I read it, which was in the report that came out of France, right? And there it was. I thought it was cool.
The Cometa report?
Yeah, the Cometa report. And
yes,
I mean,
that's right.
That's where I first read it. And I thought it was kind of cool. All right. I like the way that, it kind of had that European flair, right? It kind of,
with my croissant.
Yeah, exactly. Real butter. So that was the first time. And then today in this story, UFOs, Pentagon, taking this seriously. So Kirkpatrick,
I didn't see the story.
I was just looking for it again. I couldn't find it, but I'm not. Okay. Anyway, Kirkpatrick definitely 100% is putting the UAP spin into foreign adversary spying on the United States. And so the reporter from CNN asked him, again, I wish I could just read it, but I'm going to paraphrase.
Yeah.
Do you have specific evidence that points towards this? And he says, can't comment on that.
Yeah, because he doesn't.
About the adversary, about the foreign
He doesn't
stuff?
have any evidence that these UAP are Russian or Chinese. Let's get real. It's not there. You got those encounters off the Eastern Coast. Let's talk about that. The whole Ryan Graves encounters of 2014, 2015. All right, let's start there. Let's just think about the Atlantic Ocean. China? No, China does not have a navy or a presence in that part. You just look at the globe. They're not in the Atlantic, and U.S. military strategists know this for a fact. Now, the Russians could, in theory, have something out there. That's true. But in 2014 and 2015, what was going on in the world? Crimea was happening. The whole Maidan revolution, CIA orchestrated revolution in Ukraine, happened in 2014. Like, that's where their attention was. That's what they're focusing on. Does anyone honestly think they're going to be playing games in U.S. waters or, international waters, I guess, but near the U.S. waters to do these provocations with, by the way, utterly extraordinary technologies that, according to Graves and every other Navy pilot who encountered these things, is far beyond anything that they've ever seen.
Plus, it was in a grand. Plus, it was in a grand scale too, as well.
It's ridiculous.
It wasn't just. It wasn't one object. It was dozens of objects every day of the calendar year.
It's not Russia, and it's obviously not China. You can look at the Nimitz encounter in 2004. You and I have talked about this, and a lot of people have talked about it, but I'll just remind everyone historically. In 2004, China was a totally different place. It had not even remotely the capability of sending those types of craft to the U.S. coastline, nor the geopolitical motivation or desire. They were friendly with the United States. I mean, there was competitive trade and all of that, but they sought after and wanted and had relatively good relations with the U.S. at that time. And so did Russia. That's what people forget. In 2004, Russia was trying to get into NATO. Russia was actively trying to get into NATO. They were trying to make nice with the West. The U.S. would never let them in. But the Russians were never going to engage in that type of activity in 2004. Not a chance. So, you can't really, it's disingenuous, in my view, to point to foreign adversaries, presumably Russia or China. And I would even go so far as to say the 2019, 2020 encounters that we know about off the West Coast. I'm just not buying it. I think the debrief was at the War Zone. They did a piece basically trying to point the finger at China for those cases in 2019, or maybe Russia, but I don't believe that for an instant. I think that's
no, and there's a big difference in technology as far as I'm concerned. with a balloon and something that's traveling at 80,000 miles per hour. Right.
Yeah. By the way, the balloon. Can we just? I think the U.S. itself confirmed that was not a spy balloon. Just saying. We got all of our panties in a twist over that. Oh my God! And as far as I know that I read this was a U.S. determination, not a spy balloon. All that.
What was the last song you heard today? Listen to.
I was thinking of that, and you will be surprised. It was Daydream Believer by the Monkees.
Really?
Yeah. Listen, I love the Monkees.
Of course.
I don't care if they didn't play their own song. I don't know what they did. Doesn't matter. They're awesome. You cannot listen to them and not love them.
That their backup band,
it was the Wrecking Crew, wasn't that it?
Yeah, the Wrecking Crew, the best studio musicians in all of the known universe. Okay, that's it. Tommy Tedesco, Carol Kay, the Wrecking Crew, the absolute best. Who played on everybody's
all the Monkey songs? Was that them? I think I read that.
Yeah.
I read that. I read that in. Remember Dave McGowan, who wrote about the Laurel Canyon stuff?
Yes.
The strange but mostly true story of Laurel. Yeah, he's not alive, which is really a shame because he would be a great guest for you, by the way, and for me.
Yes.
But I learned about it in his treatment of that. I think he talked a little about Monkees and the Wrecking Crew.
Well, okay. This is how good the Monkees band was. The same musicians were the Beach Boys. Right? Stop it. Just chew on that for a second.
Wait, and what do you mean?
Yeah. Pet Sounds. That's the Wrecking Crew. Yeah.
Come on. You telling me the Wrecking Crew played the Beach Boys music?
I just told you, Pet Sounds, not the early stuff. But
the Beach Boys did not play Pet Sounds? They did not do that? Brian
No.
Wilson, those guys, they did not?
Brian Wilson did. He wrote everything and he conducted, but that's Carol Kay playing bass. That's not Dennis, what's his name from the Beach Boys, whatever his name was. Yeah. Dennis Wilson.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah. Pet Sounds. Okay. Well, hold on. Okay. Watch this. I keep reminding you, you're such a curmudgeon. Keep reminding you there's this thing called Google. And you can find out stuff. I know. You type it. He's so smart. So watch this. Watch how cool this is. Pet Sounds. All right. Pet Sounds, Beach Boys. Right. And then when you do that, after that, you type in these 4 letters, WIKI. I don't know what it means, but this thing pops up, and it's right here. Here it is. Pet Sounds. And you ready?
Yeah.
It marked the most complex instrumental and vocal parts of any Beach Boys album, and the first in which studio musicians, the Wrecking Crew, replaced the band on the instrumental tracks. The album cannot be reproduced live and was the first time that any group departed.
The Wrecking Crew is too good.
They couldn't play live. Right here. And this thing called Wiki. What's it called? Wiki. Wiki Ped-IA.
I never heard of that one.
Yeah. It's good, though. You should check it out. Yeah, The Wrecking Crew. And man, a great documentary on Netflix. How do we go there? Oh, yeah. So I asked you the last.
I was getting into the monkey.
Yeah, let's see. So the last thing I listened to today, oh man. Yeah, okay, I got to admit to this. I'm going to do it. Enya.
Hey, you know what?
I did.
She had her moments.
She had her moments.
30 years ago in the early 90s, Enya was rocking it, man. She was pretty good.
I think she owns Ireland. I think she bought Ireland with that money.
She's I used to enjoy listening to Enya. I haven't listened to her in a while.
Nothing wrong with Enya.
No, she had a really good sound.
You just don't admit it in public, but you listen to it in private and
hey, you know what? Listen, years ago, I was at a family reunion. I was talking to one of my cousins who's she's a really smart jazz fan. I love jazz. But I remember I told her I really enjoyed ABBA. And she looked at me, and I love ABBA. She looked at me like she had lost respect for me. I'm like, just get back over there. ABBA's amazing. They're awesome. They're happy. They're talented. Just shut up.
Man, I went out to Palm Springs a couple of months ago for Skywatch with Billy Carson, right? And we brought some friends in from around the country. There's like 20 of us. And so driving across the desert from my house to there, straight desert run, like real desert run, right? And I was like, what am I going to do? ABBA's greatest hits. Let's go. Hit play. Man, 20 tracks back to back, and you're singing. No, man, ABBA on pitch. Yeah, so check this out. I'm gonna share this with you. Billy and I are on the top of this hill at Giant Rock. You've been to Giant Rock, and so. Next to Giant Rock is this hill. We took my Jeep up on top of this hill, set up chairs, and really cool. We're looking down on Giant Rock. That's how high up we were. Okay. So we're sitting up there, and Richard, from the west, the sun is setting, and it's a little orange. It's turning blue, but the sun is now gone. Right. Okay. And at that moment, I just kind of look to the due west. And I see on the horizon, maybe 5 degrees up, like just right there, an orange dot just in the sky. So it kind of catches my eye, and I, we all just kind of, it's bright. Could be Venus, but it's getting bigger, and it's coming at us. And check this out. This is exactly what goes down. I'll make it this quick because it lasted about 30 seconds. This thing comes straight at us, and it's low. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm like, I got my night vision. And Billy says, it's a plane. Nobody shine your lasers on it. Don't point your lasers. Okay. It's a plane.
That's
and I'm
considered wrong now to shine lasers at planes. I heard.
Right. And I'm like, I don't know, Billy. And it comes right over the top. And now I put the night vision on. It's not a plane. There's no flashing lights or anything, but it's low and it's bright and it's orange. And then it does this right on top of us. It goes straight up, not very fast, straight up, gone into space. And Billy says out loud, I reserve the right to say that's not a plane. and we saw stuff all night, but what I just explained to you is exactly how it went down. I'm so glad we had 20 people there. Now, with something like that, AOC needs to be there, right? You need to have a timber chat. You need to have the skeptics in Congress. Those out. You need people to see this for themselves. And not so much eyewitness testimony is great, but you need that paradigm shift, right? You need to see it for yourself.
Was that sighting enough to really convince a hardcore skeptic, though? I wonder. I mean, people can do all sorts of mental gymnastics to come up with an explanation for these things.
Yeah. Neil deGrasse Tyson would, but
I think a lot of major media people would.
Yeah, but when you see something turn like that and just go straight up into the star, it doesn't make any sense. Nothing does that.
I totally agree. I haven't seen any UFOs lately. I mean, with you, we had that really, really cool experience. A couple of years ago at Contact in the Desert, and I had a couple of other personal experiences where I saw unusual things, but I haven't seen anything lately. But I read UFO reports every single week. I read many every week just for my research. So I'm constantly in the weeds on old and new reports. I basically just data mine the National UFO Reporting Center. These days I'm in it all the time. And it's just fascinating to me because, they come in so many every single day. every day. And, you know, it's a truism. It's almost a cliche when you hear people saying, well, 95% or more are conventionally explainable. And maybe that's true, but I'm going to tell you, I really don't. I think people just say that sort of thing without really looking at the cases. I think it's a higher percentage of unknowns than just 5%. I think that there's higher percentage of anomalous ones. When I go through the New Fork database, I don't really have a science. I'm just reading an account, but I have my wow criteria. So if I read a case and it makes me say wow out loud, then I think that's interesting. And I would say at least 1 out of 10 that I read and that make me say wow. They're really interesting, like detailed, usually well put together, and just believable. And I mean, probably none of those cases, or very few, ever get really like an investigation that we would say, like MUFON going in there, interviewing some witnesses, maybe some, but very few. But good God, man. I mean, there's just so many of them, and they're so, I just find them compelling. And it's just an enormous resource there that I don't really think too many people are looking at. But so when you're telling me you saw this, I have no problem believing that whatsoever.
Yeah, it was nuts. It was nuts. And you know what? It's not in the New Fork database. I, so many others, didn't call it in, didn't report it, didn't jump online, didn't go to MUFON and, open up. No. And how many sightings and experiences like mine go that route? I would say not 100%, but pretty dang. I mean, really close to that.
Totally agree. Totally agree with that. And, I had 2 sightings many years ago, and I didn't put those in. I should go back and put them in. I know I can. I think I will. I think I'll do that. But you're right.
Let me ask you a question, because I've been thinking about this lately. In National Security State Volume 1, it's not okay. It's a great book. It's an amazing book. I've told you that enough. All right, I just said it there. It's not 1947 and after in that book that stands out for me. And it's all great. And NICAP and the Kehoe things and the way that you cover stuff is just amazing. It's very in depth. But it's pre-1947 when you start off the book. Now, there's not a lot of information out there that is readily available, but you cite dozens and dozens of cases before 1947 in the book that before Kenneth Arnold said what he said, before the Roswell headlines, before there was that term in pop culture, flying saucer, right? Mm-hmm. That's exactly what was being reported all over the world before 1947. Where did you get that information? And there's a lot of it in there. It's tremendous.
Well, I started at 1941 because I knew that I wanted to include the whole World War II Foo Fighter phenomenon. Because once I started getting into the research, I realized, I had not known. I started this in I became interested in this subject, and I think it was in 1993. And I knew nothing. So it took a little while. And where I started, there were 2. One was I got online, which was what was in the internet. I went on the Usenet bulletin boards and just started looking at UFO stuff. But I as I often has mentioned, I got a copy of Above Top Secret by Tim Good. That's a really good book to start off with. I mean, that's a great book.
For sure.
So I read that one pretty carefully, and I know he talked about Foo Fighters in there. I don't know why I wanted to start with 1941. I guess because I thought there just I wasn't confident about going back prior to that. I just thought I've got to have this as a project that I can manage. I mean, I was just starting out. Writing that book was my education in the UFO field. I mean, people have to realize there are gaps, there are missing parts of that book. Yeah, absolutely. I was starting with 0 information. I started writing that book in 1995, I think was my first year that I was actively researching and writing it in an organized way. And I was learning as I went along. So I caught up fast, I think, but it was still a big learning curve for me. So I didn't want to bite off more than I could chew. I mean, it was enough. It was enough to cover the 40s up to 1973, frankly. So I used Tim Good. I used all of Donald Kehoe's old books, all of those. We talked about a lot of those World War II sightings. I think Ruppelt even talked about them, Lorenzens. I was at that point, I didn't have access to a lot of the FOIA documents when I started that book. By the time I finished that book, I had gotten some FOIA documents that I'd been able to read, but not too many, you know. I went through a lot of the old books. So I went through all the stuff from the 50s and 60s.
And why I find it so compelling is that, and it's not the case with everything and everybody, but certainly it happens, is you contaminate the pool, right? And so everybody's got something in their head post 1947, right? But before that, when you're making a comment or you see something that's traveling at extraordinary speeds, by the way, 1941, the jet engine was still in development in Great Britain. It was in development. There was nothing like that flying in the sky. Rockets were in development. You know, that's Peenemünde and everything else.
There were rockets in the early 40s.
Rockets, but not like that. And so when somebody makes a comment about something moving, at over 1,000 miles per hour,
right.
and they're trying in 1941, 42, 43. And describing it in those terms of very strange flight characteristics.
With incredible maneuverability.
Yes, because everything back then was in slow motion. Props. You know what I mean? Nothing fantastical.
Were they getting up to like 400 miles per hour? I mean, they were getting to be pretty fast. But still, these things are way faster, of course. One thing that I absolutely had to cover once I learned about were the 1946 Ghost rockets that were primarily over Sweden. But then actually, I mean, these were not rockets. They were called Ghost rockets because rocket was a new thing in 1946. And so the media just started calling them that, but they weren't rockets. There's no evidence.
And it wasn't just Sweden. It wasn't just Sweden.
No,
eventually around the world.
Yeah, Sweden was a big area for it, for sure. They were the biggest area, but there was a lot of activity noted over Greece, which is at the other end of the continent. And we know about the Greek situation due to the scientist Paul Santorini, who had been on the Manhattan Project during the war. He was a world-renowned scientist. After the war, goes back to Greece, and 20 years after, I think it was in 1966, 67, he gave an interview. And he said, yeah, we looked into the ghost rockets. The Greek government wanted us to look into it. We determined they were not Russian. They were not rockets. They were not conventional aircraft. And he said, at that moment, he said, a foreign government came in and took over the whole operation. And that was the end of it. Foreign government, obviously being the United States. So, this was, that whole thing in 1946, there was no talk about flying saucers, but there was extreme national security over that phenomenon by the United States. They knew exactly what was going on. There was talk here and there that the Soviets, the Russians, had somehow tripled the range of their V rockets within, a year or two of the end of the war. That just was not, none of that was credible. The Russians were not firing any of those rockets. There's not a scrap of evidence for that to this day. And I think the Americans knew this.
Well, and the other point about that I always found extremely interesting was not all of them, but most were silent. And in some cases, it was like getting to be a daily situation. And if you put V2 into the mix, and Russia had somehow gotten this manufacturing capability and of course, brought some of the technology back from Germany after the war, They didn't have that amount of anything to be firing. They were rebuilding the country, and it's the end of World War II. There were, probably thousands of ghost rockets were seen over that 2-year period. And you know what's crazy? Stopped. Just ended.
I think it was less than 2 years, but
less than 2. Yeah.
It was really for 1946. And it did stop. You're right. It seemed to. And the other thing that's just worth, tossing out there, the Swedish military absolutely looked into this. They did an investigation. The results of that investigation were classified for over 40 years. And then when we learned about it in the 1980s, the report came out and they concluded in this very highly bureaucratic language, but I'm paraphrasing, I have it written out, but they basically said, well, the indications appear to be that, all of these qualifiers, they basically said, some of these things came down, they recovered them, and they said, not Russian, not aircraft. They left it completely open that this was something very extraordinary. That's how I read it.
Yeah, and the even some of the eyewitness testimony accounts in 1946, they saw them land. They saw them come down. They knew exactly where they were, and this is the citizens of the country that were reporting
land
this.
and in water as well.
Yeah, that's right.
In bodies
That's right.
of water. They did both. I don't know what it was. I mean, what was it about Sweden at that time? It's a really good question to ask. I don't know what the answer to that would be.
One of the things that Sean Kirkpatrick mentioned today, that the public portal, right, is going to be open in about a month, and he anticipates thousands of submissions. And there's a second portal. One is for current events, right? Okay. You've seen something and you report it. The other one is historical cases. And that portal is going to open in about 2 months. So, and they're asking for submissions from the public of cases historically that you have evidence on that you would like his team to look at. He also said that they have 40 employees, but they are rapidly increasing the staff in anticipation of thousands of reports a day.
Why don't they just, buy my books and just put the cases in? It's like,
have you ever done that? Okay, you're being, funny, haha, right now.
Not really. I mean, if they want historical cases, they
have you? But right? Have you sent 200 copies to the Senate? 100 copies?
No.
Have you sent 400 to the House of Representatives?
I haven't, if that counts. Does that help?
Why not?
If yeah, why not just spend a couple of grand to send them off? I could do that, sure.
Yeah, you know what they really call you. It's not bleeping. It's money bags. I'm just letting you know behind your back. It's money bags Dolan.
Is that me?
Yeah,
hey,
money bags Dolan.
All right.
It
to my bank account somehow.
And vintage baseball, right? Your historic baseball league. And now coming up to bat, we have money bags Dolan.
Hey, I played vintage baseball for over a decade, and I did have a nickname. We all did in that league. My nickname was the Professor.
Really?
I was the Professor. Yeah, I did a lot of pitching, by the way, in that league. I was pitching in that league while I was doing all my UFO travel. During the first decade of this century, I was playing vintage baseball.
Did you cheat?
No, never.
Really? So what was your best? Did you scuff the ball? Did you cut it?
No. So there's hey, vintage baseball is amazing. It's a great game.
A little Vaseline.
We played by 1850s and early 1860s rules. Depending on the year, sometimes we would say it's going to be 1858. Because the rules kept changing. Baseball was in rapid evolution during that period of time. So it started out as a gentleman's game. And that's really how they. So so a gentleman doesn't try to scuff the ball. Gentleman doesn't even try to throw that ball overhand. If you're a gentleman hurler or pitcher, you're just going to lay that thing in there real nice for the batter for the striker to hit it. So it was underhand pitching. That's how baseball evolved. It was an underhand pitch.
I thought
But-
you were throwing curveballs. Okay.
Well,
That's not pitching.
Allow
That's
me
tossing. That's
to
tossing.
explain. I was a pretty good pitcher. So what ended up happening historically and also in our league, even by the 1850s and early 60s, like people were really into baseball. So they would develop these people who go to the games all the time. They were called fanatics, where we get the word fan. Comes from baseball. It's fanatics. And because the game was so popular, there was incentive for the teams to be a little more competitive out on the field and to try to win. And so pitchers, they're trying to throw the ball underhanded, but they're also trying to get the guy out. So what would they do? Well, over time, they would, instead of just lobbing that ball in there, they'd try to maybe put a little bit of speed on it, or maybe try to figure out a way to put spin. The curveball was invented in the 1860s. People thought it was impossible, by the way. That you can't make a baseball curve. Well, yeah, guy figured it out. So what I did as a pitcher is, I tried to put different spins on the ball. And I think, sometimes I was successful, sometimes not. I mean, it wasn't that good, but I was in there. We had a good team, and I loved playing.
Man, it sounds like so much fun.
It was
Now, men's professional baseball and pitching, that's a crazy thing, especially live, because the amount of time between when the ball leaves the pitcher's hand to when it crosses the plate, it's like a split second. The batter's swinging before the pitcher, right? It's like
you have to.
Yeah,
in the major
the
leagues,
timing of it. But that's not as impressive as that is. It's nothing like women's softball. Women's softball pitchers,
they're pretty good.
Wind up.
Yeah, they're good.
Dude.
Well, I mean, men's
That's
softball is not
gnarly.
bad either, by the way. There's a men's softball pitcher, I think, threw the ball at 114 miles per hour, faster than
It's
the line.
nuts. Yeah. Much
But no,
more
women's
impressive
softball's
to
good.
me.
I actually
yeah.
I caught a game on TV like a year ago. It was pretty good.
I did the same thing. I watched the whole game, by the way.
I don't watch base. I can't watch baseball anymore. It's just too slow. But I love the game so much, and I mean, a good duel between a pitcher and a batter is just amazing. Of course, it's very difficult. Like I mean, when I was a kid, I thought I wanted to be a baseball player, but like a lot of kids, I fell short. Like I couldn't hit the curveball, and I didn't have enough training. And then like a good pitcher up there, forget it, man. He comes in, you're down strike one, no balls, one strike. And already like you're now, I'll never forget this. Like you're down in the count and now you're really nervous. Now the pitcher can just toy with you and he'll just get you swinging at bad pitches. Like I didn't have the skills. I needed to develop discipline. It's difficult. It's really tough. It's a tough game. Ted Williams said hitting a baseball was the hardest thing in sports. He might have been biased, but he might have been right.
He might have been right. He might have been right. I sucked at baseball. I didn't have the baseball gene. I just didn't.
Yeah.
Basketball, football, tennis, golf. No issues with any of that. But baseball and I never had the gene. I
had
never
some
did.
skills at baseball. I did have some basic skills, and I could feel, I could run. I had a good arm. I could do some things, but hitting, competitive pitching, no. That's just
it's
impossible. Hit my limit.
I wanted to. I had a whole list of things that I wanted to get at you because I have been going back and reading your books lately, and I know that I called you and I said, dude, I don't know if I've ever said this is just between you and I, dude, but this book kicks ass, right?
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, and I meant it. And so, and one of the things that I wanted to ask you, it's the the airship, timing of things in the 1890s, because we have different words for it now, but back then, quite frankly, unless you were in France looking at a hot air balloon, somebody trying to cross the English Channel, you weren't seeing anything. And to have these sightings across the United States, it doesn't make any sense.
Pause. It doesn't. I have a very different opinion of the airships now than when I wrote that book. So if there were things that I would change, that would be one of them right there. For a long time, I'm just going to say this. I think I took the lazy way out. I just accepted what a lot of other researchers had been saying about the airships, and I just sort of accepted it as a given. And until I just read the newspaper accounts, like I just went back, because I didn't really have access to all the newspaper accounts when I wrote my first book in the 1990s. It just wasn't as easy to get them. But you can read them now, and I will just say that I'm very skeptical about the airship wave. I'm extremely skeptical. I'll just say that. So I think that there were definitely 19th century UFO sightings that were legit. I've got a bunch of them. I've got a bunch of water-based USO sightings from the 19th century in my forthcoming book, which is, by the way, more than 450 pages as we speak, and it's got more to go. So there are good sightings in the 19th century, but I'm not buying the airship one any longer. No, I don't think so.
In what regard are you skeptical?
When you really read. So I have a.
Are you saying it was tabloid fiction?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Eyeballs, all about the eyeballs, and a lot of it got kind of roped into the increasing tensions with Spain, which we were about to have a war with Spain. There's a lot of that was brought in, but most of it, if you know the history of Mark Twain, love Mark Twain, he's one of my faves, and Mark Twain got his start as a journalist out in Nevada or Colorado, Nevada, I think. Yeah, Nevada. And this is a little earlier than the airship, but the culture was the same. So what did Mark Twain do? He did what every other young, promising journalist did back in those days. They didn't care about fact checking, all of that stuff. They're trying to make money. They're trying to just sell newspapers and get readers. And also, by the way, they knew when they were doing something tongue in cheek, like the readers knew. Readers generally knew when some guy was spinning a yarn. Mark Twain was a genius at spinning yarns, and it's what made him famous, made him the world's first stand-up comedian, really. Because he was great at that. But that was the culture. That was so embedded in the culture. Now, there were serious newspapers back then. Yes, there were. But there was a lot of just making stuff up that happened. And when I read the airship stories now, I mean, I feel like I can just see it. Like they're very tongue in cheek, a lot of them.
Okay, I tell you where you're right. I'll tell you where you're right. They were very, I don't know if this is a term, Jules Vernish. It's very Jules Vernish in the description of them, the mechanical side of it, the propellers, the uniformed guys, that we're seeing and hanging out of windows. And there was a very, around the world in 80 days kind of thing going on that was repetitive. So, and I always got that feeling from it. But what about Aurora, though? Aurora, Texas.
Yeah, I wonder about that. Jim Mars did a whole thing on that when he was alive, and I love Jim, but I don't think I believe that one either. Now that one has more of a backstory because MUFON got involved in that in the 70s, where so the Aurora one was allegedly a crash. So one of the airships crashed into a water tower? I think it was something like that.
Windmill,
Windmill, yeah, that's what it was. And it was a dead Martian, I think they called it. And they gave him a proper Christian burial. I think they said something like this.
Yeah, right.
And then Years later, MUFON gets wind in the early 70s. And by the way, we need to talk about this because this is really important. But MUFON gets wind of it, and they apparently find the grave. And then the claim was that when they went back to dig it up, it was missing or it was gone. I think that was the story. So that seems suspicious. But again, I don't know. I mean, in the context of all of those other airship sightings, I just have a hard time with that one. I have a hard time with all of the airship sightings. I think looking back on it, I mean, there could have been some that were maybe a legit sighting, ones that started it. Like the one that started it was in Sacramento in, I think it was November of 1896. Sacramento, I think, was the first town. And they said the mayor saw it and all of these other public officials. And I'm thinking, wow, that's really impressive. But think of it this way. Why did everyone completely forget it? Everyone forgot about the airships for 70 years until the 1960s, when some UFO researchers found the old newspapers. And they're like, oh, wow, look at this. This is an incredible thing. And like, why did no one know about it? Why did no one ever discuss it? Like, it's balloon technology. It would have been 10 years ahead of the rest of the world in balloon technology. 10 years, which is significant. I mean, the Zeppelin was the first balloon that could really do anything. Airships of the 1890s, all of them are like dangerous. They couldn't go more than like a mile, if that. France was really the leader in airship technology back then. America, as far as anyone knew, didn't really have anything going on in terms of airships, or at least not that much. And it's just kind of like, it doesn't fit anywhere. Like retroactively, there's just nowhere you put these. I used to wonder about this. I'm like, why is this absent from all of our history of aviation? Like, this would be an incredible thing. Why are no historians looking at it? Well, because I don't think it ever happened. I think it just never happened.
Now, okay, and I love talking history with you. Then we have the famous sighting in China in 1919, and those were American and British explorers. A couple of photographs were taken, and which was also described as a metallic saucer-shaped craft.
I don't remember this one offhand, so I'm intrigued by this one. I don't remember this.
I think it's chapter 2 in your book.
I mentioned.
I'm kidding. My video is skipping. Is it skipping to you?
No, you're perfect.
I'm smooth. It's skipping on my end.
No, you're coming through fine over here.
Really? You're not seeing that skip? Like what? Okay. It's just skipping on my end. I'm not going to look at it anymore.
I don't think you
but then when we turn around and we go deeper into history, because France, there was a race at that time between France, Great Britain, certainly the United States, about flying somewhere, right? We had the Wright brothers, and there were all kinds of crazy inventions that were going on at that time. But so people's imagination was starting to run and imagine these flying machines and what could fly. But once you back off of that 20, 30, 40 years, all the way back to the dawn of man, there was nothing in the sky but birds.
Right.
That's it. There's nothing else to imagine or to think about or to contemplate unless you saw something in the sky. All right. Now, what do you do with those accounts when you go further back?
Yeah, it's just a very good question. I think about this one a lot. Over the last 5 years, I'm thinking I have really, really just personally, on a personal thing, gotten really into ancient history, just almost as a side thing. I mean, it started for me because I kept wanting to find a hole in our history where an ancient alien thesis could work. And I kept thinking, like, where would it be? Where would it be? So that just led me on this journey, which I'm absolutely obsessed with ancient history now. So, and I mean, I'm an avid reader. I have probably read Wonders in the Sky cover to cover maybe 4 or 5 times. I mean, I go back over it many, many times. It's a fantastic book. Jacques Vallée and Chris Aubeck. And what they do, of course, if someone doesn't know, is they discuss historical, let's call them UFO sightings, going back thousands of years, basically 2,000 years, roughly, up to the age of aviation. So through most of the 19th century. And it's a great book. But even that book, like when I go back over those cases, now I feel that there was a phenomenon in ancient times, probably, but I'm a little harder on it than I ever was in the past. I think again, as the community, we're way too accepting because we kind of want it all to be true as well. Like we want that. We want to be able to say they've always been here. I don't want to pick on Gary Nolan. I think he's great, but I heard him say that in an interview a couple of months ago. Well, they've always been here. And I thought that's actually kind of lazy, with respect. And I don't really, and who's the they that's always been here, by the way? Is it the Greys? Have they always been here? Or is there a different group? Like there's a lot of things to consider when we say that. What I say is there are some very good sightings that do make me interested. And there are a lot of the others that I read, even in that book, where I think, no, that's clearly like we don't have almost any understanding of those cultures, of like medieval European culture. We don't understand it, most of us, or ancient China or ancient Japan. There's a lot of reports out of there too. You know, like the famous one at Nuremberg that everyone loves to talk about from I think 1564. I don't buy that one either. I'm not keen on that one anymore.
And you are the cranky old man. What happened?
Well, what happened is that I want to be objective and I want to know what's true. And so for me, I want to understand what is the actual nature of this phenomenon? How long has it actually been going on? What are they doing? And what's our best evidence? And when I look at some of these earlier cases, what I believe is that we're actually muddying our own waters with bad cases. That's what I think.
Well, the Nuremberg woodcuts, there's 2. Right, the Nuremberg woodcuts. When you look at that, yeah, okay, you don't see flying saucers. You're not looking at anything like, but you're clearly not looking at natural objects. That's that part. But it's the testimony that made it into the one sheet. It's the Village newspaper, right? Which says that there was a battle going on in the skies, a battle going on in the skies for
so
2 days.
So here we go. So this is the context. The context is the religious wars that were tearing Europe apart at that very moment. Okay, that was all going on. Nuremberg, by the way, was like in the heart of it. In the heart. Nuremberg's in the southern part of Germany. You got Catholics and you got Protestants all right there. This was an extremely tense time. There wasn't an actual war in Nuremberg in that year, but there were wars going on all around them. So that's one thing that just to keep in mind. Okay, there's a lot of overwhelming amount of religious tension, and in a culture in which people were always looking for portents in the skies and signs to interpret. And I mean, there are always like these are always trying to be interpreted. In fact, he does that in his sheet. He tried to interpret that as like, well, we need to be more peaceful. We really shouldn't, I can't remember his exact things. But the other thing is that he said that sighting started, I think it was at 4 a.m, or it was before people were even awake. Now, I don't want to nitpick this poor guy. He's been dead for 5 centuries, but he's got the sun high up in the sky while all this stuff's going on. At 4 a.m, it's not happening. There's not going to be a sun out there. It's like, what actually did he see? Did he see anything? He said it was before it was at super early in the morning. Where are all the witnesses coming? Yes, I realize people in the medieval times worked really hard, but were they all up at 4 a.m. watching this thing? It doesn't add up to me. There's just too many things that are wrong with it. And I've read a lot of cases from that period of time that were obviously made up, just made up stuff in order to make a point, a political point or a religious point or what have you. There was one that I read from England in 1662, or 61 or 62. It was right after what was called the Glorious, the Restoration. That's what it was, of James II to the crown. So you'd had, the English cut off a couple of kings' heads, or one, they cut off Charles. Charles was killed in 1649, and then Cromwell comes in and they get rid of the monarchy for a little over a decade. And it's all Parliament. It's the Puritans, who were a real buzzkill to people who liked theater and dancing. None of that was allowed. Cromwell dies. A couple of years later, the new king comes back in 1660. And right after that, there's a sighting, supposedly in, I think, Bristol, of this. It was taken so seriously. And to this day, I see this on websites, and it's so clearly not true. So the sighting was out of the river, was the figure of a man, and he was going back and forth. He was this grim countenanced figure of a man up in the air, and all these people. And the guy who's writing about it said, yeah, there was like a group coming back from a wedding, and they were walking along the riverbank, or along the River Severn, which is right there. And they all saw this, and they were all good people, and they're reliable people. And they said they saw this grim countenance man going back and forth in the sky, and then he disappeared. And then there was a figure on horseback gallantly riding back and forth, and then he disappeared. And then there was a beautiful woman in a robe, and then she was there, and then she went away. And I'm like, look, I mean, the grim countenance man were the Puritans. The guy on horseback was Charles II, who was known as a good horseman, a good cavalier. And the woman's, peace or justice or tranquility or whatever. Like, I read that, I'm like, that's obvious. That's what this was. You got to understand it in the context of the history, which we seldom do. The Nuremberg sighting of a century earlier, to me, falls into probably the same category. There's a lot of.
I don't get that. I don't get that feeling out of Nuremberg, but and we can debate that. I mean, what's next? Are we going to do Bob Lazar?
I got all worked up, so this is what I do.
Okay, yeah. And so a couple of years ago, I narrated a film, and one of the cases that I did during the narration of this film, I can't remember the specifics, but it was around 1800. I want to say in the Chicago area, like in that area.
Early or late 19th century?
Let me. The then governor of the state, right, was with the mayor of the city or town that they were, and they were traveling from one spot to another via boat on a river. Okay, and this is coming straight from the governor's journal or diary. Mm-hmm. And he wrote, and I wish I had the script somewhere and I could just read it to you. But anyway, he says, Bob and I hopped in the boat. We were going up to whatever, right? Yeah. Any town, Happy Town, USA. And this bright light object flew over the trees above our boat and went up the river, and we paddled to follow it, and it was in the sky above the river and then landed back in the forest, in the trees, and we could see it through the trees. Yeah. By the time we got there, paddling up the river, it was gone. But that's the description that he gives in the book, and they were paddling for for the evening. You know what I mean? They're
No,
having this.
now that's different. Like that, I can get behind a case like that. I would like to read that one. That sounds intriguing to me. That's very different. By the time you get to the 18th and 19th century in Western culture, particularly, you really start seeing a much more overtly rationalistic scientific approach to these things. So, which gives me more confidence in them. I mean, it's not that super religious people of the ancient past couldn't see things. I'm sure that they did, and I'm sure that there were some very good sightings. And in fact, when I read Aubeck's book, Wonders in the Sky, I'm like, yes, there are a lot of good cases in there that strike me as good. So there's a lot of fluff. That's all I'm saying. The one you're describing sounds very good. There's a lot of very excellent 19th century UFO cases. Many good ones.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
I didn't want to knock all of them by just dunking on the airships. I really feel like it's important. I was going to say for our community, but I'll just say it's important for me to get a good handle on what actually happened. I want to know. I want to understand the patterns of this phenomenon. I want to know what's the volume that we're dealing with. What's the geographic scope? Well, today it's worldwide and the volume is intense. Was it always high level volume? And I think the answer is no. I don't think it was always high level volume. Even when you read Wonders in the Sky, they're covering 2,000 years, and they've, you basically go 10 years between cases between they find something else, or even more. It doesn't mean that people weren't seeing things in between. Obviously, not all societies were literate. They weren't all taking good records. We understand that. But let me put it this way. Here's a good way to put it. Go back to America of the 1880s. So America of the 1880s was not as advanced as we are today, but hey, they were smart people. They had newspapers. They were scientific overall. They were very capable people. They were outdoors more than we are typically. Was there any consciousness of those people of aerial anomalies at all? And the answer has to be no, there wasn't. Why wasn't there? Well, maybe because they just weren't seeing them because they weren't there. We developed a consciousness of it because we started seeing a lot of these things, especially in the 1940s. I mean, that's really when people started seeing a lot. There were sightings before that. There were some very good ones, but something changed during the 1940s, in my opinion, in this phenomenon, where it became different and much more intense.
Well, okay, but if we've got like two periods though that I find curious. If we go back to, I think that visiting to this planet has gone on for the last billion years since there was oxygen and no more flowing lava, right? We've been a hospitable planet for about 2 billion years.
No. We've had complex life for about 500 million years, roughly.
That's what I'm saying. Okay, so that's
like
exactly
2 billion
what I'm
years
saying.
ago, you could go into some gas vent in the ocean and find some microbial life.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But I'm saying the fun side of the planet, right, where the temperatures came down, and this was a nice place to be. So let's be generous here and say 1 billion years.
Well,
but that's it. But
extremely generous. But okay.
Okay. Give or take 100 million years, Richard. Don't bust my balls.
No, I'm busting it because I don't think I agree. But anyway, keep going.
But here's my point.
Mm-hmm.
Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon didn't have a written language. We haven't had writing until 3000 BC. Writing. Okay, that's it. Everything else before then is an oral history. And much after 3000 BC was still an oral history. Exactly. They didn't have a paper and pens and stuff in Peru, in the Andes. They didn't have trees, right? So that being said, the written versions of cultures in Egypt, in Samaria, in India, and in China, all of them talk about the heavens and communication and knowledge and the stars and craft and things and flying and so I think since we had the ability to historically put something down on the record, we were doing it. And I find it very, very strange that everybody talked about the same thing. The knowledge came from
one
up
thing
there.
they were not talking about were metallic craft. So you look through the ancient descriptions for anything that we would describe as a genuine, like, ship.
Vimanas were pretty.
When they would say ship, though, when they would say ship, they literally meant a ship that goes on the water but up in the sky. Like, they would describe that sometimes, and that's kind of tough to believe.
Well, but my point being that the first chance we had to write something down, we were talking about that stuff. I mean, it's right there. So
it's true.
And
to that extent.
but it's strange to me, where I think it's plain as day. We have difficulty with our own vocabulary now.
But they actually, but I'm gonna disagree respectfully. It's in you have in the myths, you have stories of interaction sometimes with the gods, okay, who are perceived as up there. Yeah, that happened, and you get that with the Hebrews, you get that with the Indian subcontinent, you get that with basically the whole Indo-European thing. So that includes the Norse, the Mayans. I assume I'm not really expert on the Mayan mythology. I mean, I hear certain things. I can't really fully speak to that, but yes, I mean, they had gods. But when you go into the records, like going through, I don't know, the records of the literature of ancient Greece, where we have a lot. We've lost a lot, unfortunately, but we still have a lot. It's not in Aeschylus, it's not in Sophocles, it's not in Plato even. It's not in Aristotle. It's not like those ancient writers don't cover any of that stuff. And you might think if there was an active phenomenon that was getting people's attention, that they might have mentioned it. But I'm not aware of any such mentions like that. Now you get people writing about signs and portents in the sky, especially during the medieval period in Europe. You get a lot of that. That's true. But what were they really seeing? I mean, were they seeing comets sometimes? Were they seeing other kinds of astronomical phenomena? I'm sure that they were. I've read a story. I don't know if I mentioned this to you. This is true. This was not in a UFO book. I was reading some history of ancient Rome a couple of years ago. And what was it? Oh, yeah. So when Attila, the Hun, is toward the end of Rome, he's besieging Rome. It's like in the year 454, something like that. And the Huns were terrifying. So Rome's falling apart at this point. They're like, I got nothing left in the tank. They send a delegation out to meet with Attila. I remembered reading about this. This was in some 19th century history. So they covered all of this.
Is this when they met on a bridge?
No. So they had a walk to the Huns' camp.
Right.
And so it took a couple of days. Like, this is not like today where you can just fly out. And so they had a walk, and that meant they had to camp out overnight and all of that. So this is my point. And I swear this is what I read. There's three of them. They woke up the next morning, and one of the guys was like, "Oh my God, the sun is rising in the west. This is a portent. This is something that's this can't be happening." And you just think, dude, the sun does not rise in the west. It never does. It never has. It never will. You got all mixed up. And the point is, they didn't realize it. The guy didn't realize they're facing the opposite way. Now, not all Romans were that way, but you're talking about a society, and all ancient societies, by our standards today, we would only describe them as unbelievably superstitious. That's not a word that we really like to use anymore because it sounds like a slur. They're so superstitious. And it sounds like it's knocking someone's religious faith. But the fact is, ancient people were unbelievably superstitious. That's a fact. And so that has to be factored into our understanding of ancient people. Yes, they were every bit as intelligent as us, and in a lot of ways more. A lot of ways more. But that doesn't mean that they had a sophisticated, scientific, rational understanding of the world around them, because they basically didn't. Most of them didn't. That's the truth. And so it colors my interpretation when I read a lot of these ancient reports. Or ancient, they're not even reports, they're stories, because there was never a single investigation ever done on any one of those ancient sightings that I am aware of. There was no MUFON out there saying, now, when you hold it at arm's length, was it as big as a nickel or a dime? No one did that. They didn't have MUFON investigators back in the 16th century or before.
And I think it's good to be the cranky old man, right? And to question everything. There's no doubt about it. It goes back to that same ratio that you were talking about in Sean Kirkpatrick and others. There's 95% are explainable, but that's that 5% that is crazy town, and that needs to be the focus. I think that same ratio applies across the board, all the way back through ancient history. It does. But the part for me is that when we take everything as a whole and we go to something like the Vimanas in India, or we look at the Sumerian tablets, or we look at Ezekiel's wheel, or we look at some of the depictions in ancient Egypt as well, and you look at this and you think to yourself, what context do they have to let the imagination go that far? Because back then, and this is religious and philosophical, the earth was all there was, right? That's it. That's it. There wasn't a contemplation of life beyond the stars. Whereas of today, we now know as fact that every star, for the creation of that star, creates a ring of dirt. That dirt coagulates and creates planets, and every star has at least one planet, and it's part of the creation of the star itself. And that's it. Everything has planets. Back then, they didn't have a point of reference to go and make this.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the part for me where I bring in the science today. The amount of life out there that got the jump start on us, infinite is a big number, but it might be that.
Maybe. By the way, if you're talking about Vimanas, don't use there's a book called the Vamanika Shastra. Avoid that one. That's the book where it talks about the Vimanas having all the mirrors and the Mercury and all that stuff. That's all. That's a 19th century creation. It was basically channeled material, but somehow it gets included as part of the Vimana tradition, which is totally wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
You're right about that. And I think I just read this the other day. We've only translated and transcribed like 0.1% of the Indian text.
The Vedas.
It's just sitting on shelves. Yeah, sitting on shelves.
I have been wanting to get a really comprehensive read on all references to Vimana in the Vedas. You got the Mahabharata and you got what's the other one? The Ramayana, I think. They're both they're like 10 times longer than Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. Like, they're ridiculously long. But there's references to the Vimanas in there, and I would love to know like what Indian scholars think about that. I'm not really familiar what they have to say about it. I really ought to. I feel like I ought to know.
When we look at this and we compare it to, like I said, there isn't a reference for imagination. Like, you weren't thinking about interplanetary travel or life on another planet. Another planet was never discussed or thought about in any text.
True.
And so where would these ideas come from?
No,
And
it's true. Like,
especially
yeah.
the heavens, voices from the heavens. It's just like, wait, what? Unless it was actually happening. And when we look at the science today that supports not only life out there, and that's what we're searching for, the amount of life that is aware of Earth, it's got to be extraordinary, because we're chalking up another exoplanet every hour, right?
Yeah.
Of every day.
I'm sure there's a lot. I'm sure there is sophisticated life out there, and I just want people to listen who are listening to recognize. I wish I didn't know we were going to get into ancient UFOs, and if I had, I would have probably had available a couple of the ancient stories that I really do find believable, and they're out there. I promise. There are some that I think are genuine. What you're saying about life, I just read this again earlier this week. The majority of stars are part of binary star systems.
That's right.
So I don't know how that would affect the development of life. I guess you could probably still have life develop in a binary star system. I don't know how if that would complicate things or not. But our sun, we're kind of, and then I think what I was learning recently is that most star systems, they're able, astronomers, this is incredible to me. I don't know how this is possible, but they're able to make a determination of how many planets a lot of these stars have now. I mean, don't you miss a few? One, apparently, though, we have the largest solar system that we've discovered. I think there is one that they found that has as many planets as ours, and many that do not. Now, I mean, I don't know if that's a function of just maybe a lack of sensitive enough instrumentation to detect them, but I just
okay. So there are a few different detection methods. Okay, now first off, you would have to when you look at a transit detection, that is when a planet is orbiting on the same plane as us, right? We're looking at it sideways, and we see a dip in the brightness of the star because a planet is passing in front of it, right? Okay. Sure. That's called a transit. But you can't detect it unless you are looking at it sideways.
Right.
Follow me? Right? If the planet's going this way, right? You're not going, but that's the other way of detecting is the wobble. So if you have the transit with the dimming of the star, the wobble is when gravitationally the planet, as it is orbiting, the star is going to shift a little bit side to side. Sure. And we can detect that movement. Yeah. All right. Now, in the case of our solar system, where we have, depending on what day of the week and who's counting, we have 7, 8, 9, 10 planets. Yeah. Gravitationally, what is making our planet or our star wobble? Is it Jupiter? Our sun is not perfect, right? It's not. It is on its own gravitational pull. So it's actually moving like this, a very small amount, but something is making that pull. Is it Earth? No, probably not. Not big enough. Is it Jupiter? Is it Saturn? Is it Uranus? It's the same thing that you would apply out there. Would Mercury, would that dim our sun enough as it orbits, and would that be detectable? So, it's very difficult to, we know that TRAPPIST has 7 planets.
It makes. So you know this. Well, good job.
Yeah. TRAPPIST-1 has 7 planets, but we have detected multiple planets around other stars.
Yeah, no,
but
I
now you understand what I'm saying, though. So
yeah, I really didn't even need to bring that whole. I think it just got us down a road we didn't need to go. Like, I agree that there is very likely a abundance of life beyond Earth. I see no reason to doubt that. And I mean, just in theory, I mean, in practice, there's a whole UFO phenomenon, and I don't know how else to explain it. But in theory as well, it makes perfect sense that there would be a lot of life out there. And I'm sure that there is.
Avi Loeb corrected me one night at dinner, sitting next to me, and you know how I'm loud, I'm stupid, and I stand my ground sometimes when I shouldn't, right? Or I attempt to stand my ground. And so I'm sitting there with freaking Avi Loeb, right? I'm going to debate an astrophysicist that was the director of the Black Hole Institute at Harvard University, right? I'm gonna match frontal lobes with this guy, right? So I attempted to do it, and it was fun. We were having a good time. And anyway, he looks at me, and I dropped a dime. I said something like, there's 40 billion habitable Earth-like planets. In the Milky Way.
Oh, you did, huh?
Yeah. And he looks at me and he goes, Jimmy, wrong. I said, what do you mean? He goes, there's at least 1 trillion planets in our Milky Way. And 1 trillion is a big number. And if we take a small percentage off of that, we are talking about hundreds of billions. And so when we look at that, and so we broke it down.
If there's 1 trillion, then 200 billion would be 20%.
Yeah, 20%. And so
habitable. That sounds like a high percentage, doesn't it?
That's anyway. So he said a percentage of that in the Goldilocks zone, rocky Earth-like planets. And I was in a much smaller number than that, where I was throwing around, 40 billion planets in the Milky Way. And he very quickly, shut me down, and he said, look, I'm saying 1 trillion. There's probably about 1 trillion stars in the Milky Way, 1 trillion. And he said there is at least 1 planet on each one. And when you look at our star system, he brings it up. There's 8 planets here. How many are out there? So there could be 8 trillion planets. And if you've got to think about that, right? That's 1,000 billion per trillion, right? It's like the numbers start to really get out of control. But physicists and theoretical physicists and astrophysicists and astronomers, they all understand and support the numbers now, where it is a pure numbers game. Yeah. So how much of that is aware of Earth? Well, even if it's just 1/10 of a percent, we're talking about millions of advanced civilizations, millions.
Yeah. I firmly believe that we got the attention of probably a couple of groups out there. That's what I think. But I still maintain that my assessment, because I'm trying to always create my scenario. What do I think is true? I always just want to know, what is true? And what I think is true is that we humans did get someone's attention early on in our existence because we were special. We were special. We were tool users. And actually, there were a bunch of different human groups that were living at the same time on this planet. 100,000 years ago, there was us, there was Neanderthals, there was Denisovans. There were the little hobbit people out in Flores, the islands out there in Indonesia. There might have been even Homo erectus still around, actually, as little as 100,000 years ago. So they were all interesting too. All were tool users, all were kind of smart. We, Homo sapiens, came out on top from that whole thing, and there are no other human groups now. But we had to get someone's interest early on, especially, I would say, the real key for us is, well, there's several, I guess, but when we developed complex spoken language, and there's a lot of debate on this right now, but a lot of people will say 50, 60,000 years when we got into like the kind of grammar that we currently have, like that, where we can express fairly complex sentences to each other. That was kind of a big step, and it allowed us to kind of multiply our intelligence from one person to a whole group of people, and it just gave a lot of extra power. But be that as it may, I think that we probably were likely to get someone's attention. But you think about it, like you put yourself in their position, an alien species 40,000 years ago looking at us. Like we were very intelligent. Those people were equal physiologically to ourselves today. Cognitively, they were. But they didn't know a lot about the things that we know. And I think it would have been very, very difficult for them to handle, psychologically, probably to handle something like a landed spaceship in their territory, I think it probably would not have been good for their development. And I could imagine an observing intelligence having very much a hands-off approach and just observing for the time being. And then the problem is, let's say someone did observe us 40,000 years ago, then what? It's now 40,000 years later. Do they have consistency of purpose over tens of thousands of years, really? Maybe they put some kind of AI thing in place to monitor us, to mark certain milestones that we achieved. They could have been like, yeah, let's let these people alone. We'll come back when they discover science, something like that.
Yeah, well, because I think that's how we would handle it.
I think that's what happened to us. I think that is what happened on Earth.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why I agree with that, like 100%. We are so busy cataloging, right? We catalog, we another exoplanet, exoplanet ABC 1, 2, 3, boom, we move on to the next one. We're not going back to that planet to study it. That's the way we are doing it. We have thousands of exoplanets out there that need to be confirmed, right? We're just too busy. There's too much that needs to go into that. Anyway, if we were interstellar, okay, it's almost like Star Trek, right? Mm-hmm. How many times on Star Trek do you, okay, we've got an uncharted planet that is, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right, yeah.
And it would be like that for ET. You're doing a drive-by here. You look out the window. Okay, they're striking Flint together, right? Okay, that's where they are right now. Right. We've got another 50,000 planets to get done this year. So we're going to move on to the next one and see what's going on there, and the next one, and the next one. And Earth gets cataloged. You're right. They drop a probe down.
Right? Yeah, I can imagine that. I can imagine a probe of some sort, and some kind of, maybe you could even say a periodic low-level observation. I could see that. There was a really weird story from a friend of Leonardo da Vinci. The guy's name was Fabio Carzano, I think it was, and he was a very, very accomplished man. If you're a friend of Leonardo, you're probably kind of smart yourself, and he was high-level guy. I think he was a doctor, and he had a very good reputation, around the European continent. That he had a very good reputation. And his son, who became even more brilliant than the father, wrote and said, yeah, my father told me, and never stopped talking. He told me this story about how he was working, and these, I think it was 5 individuals came to him, and they were wearing these very illustrious kind of robes, and they had this interesting footwear, and they basically said, well, we don't come from around here. and they got into a conversation with this man. And he said, yeah, they told me they lived for like 300 years or more. They knew a lot of secrets, and they said, we can't tell you, He said, well, we would like to know where we could find gold. That was actually what apparently he asked them. And they're like, yeah, no, we're not really going to get into that with you. But the point is that this was a very accomplished, very respected man in his community. And he told his son, who was also very accomplished and respected in his career as well. And this is what the son said about his dad. Now, I hear that, I read that story, and I think I believe this story. I don't have a problem believing that. Who were these people talking to Fazio I think it was Cardano or Carzano? Well, I don't know. Could they have been some kind of alien interlopers who were just hanging out, and they wanted to talk to someone who they thought he might be able to handle this? I don't know. I could see that happening. Why is that impossible? They would take human form. They'd have to take human form. Would they be able to? Sure, they would. They probably were human. You know what I think really happened? I think that that a group came a long time ago, and they took some of us because we're kind of handy. Humans are, we're kind of amazing. It's not just that we're smart and we can figure things out. We got these hands with these fingers that are really good. And we're kind of like really good athletes. Like we think, oh, well, we can be outrun by a cheetah and we can get killed by a bear. But the truth is, we can throw a rock better than any animal on the planet and kill them with it. No other animal can do that. Yeah, your screen's better now.
Yeah, no, check this out. I just lost the internet. And yeah, wow. And so my whole screen went blank. It popped. It went went blank, and my internet it went down. But my other computers stayed online. It was this one that went down. So the feed was still going out. So when I came back in right now, you were still there, and I just came back in. Well
done. You handled it really well.
I saw Jimmy in 2 minutes.
I'll just finish my little pet theory here, and I'll give you the floor.
Sure.
I think some of us were taken and bred and made to live with them. That's what I think. And it makes sense. It makes perfect sense. We're useful. Like we can be taught. We maybe can graduate to their middle management for all I know. Maybe upper management. Who knows? And those human beings, of course, would identify. They wouldn't identify with our culture. They would identify with the civilization they live with, of course. But they might have a benign interest in their fellow humans that live here, as poor little troglodytes here on the surface. And maybe they might have seen us as a bit of a project. Now, here's a real question. Is the ancient phenomenon the same as the modern phenomenon? There's a question I like to ask. I think the answer is probably no.
No, I agree. I agree. And there's probably thousands of different civilizations, thousands, maybe a million, but let's say thousands that have visited this planet. Thousands. One time. I
don't know.
Well, let me finish. And I'm right, by the way, Richard. I'm right. Okay. So just take notes. Is this that have visited us once? That's it. How many have done a repeat visit? Now the number gets much, 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 much smaller. How many have that are here right now and they love the planet and they're hanging out? We're probably, we're talking single digit numbers. I don't think it's 76 identifiable races. I don't think it's that big. The universe is too big of a place to explore. Why the focus on us here? Why would that?
We need to know a few things that we don't yet know. So one thing we don't yet know, we're speculating that there's a lot of Earth-like planets out there, but we don't really know. We don't know how common they actually are. We have a moon that is very important, and we could just as easily not have had this moon. We got our moon through what is believed to be an early collision during the early formation of the solar system. They even gave it a name. I can't remember it offhand, but anyway, it became our moon. And without it, that would have made the history of Earth a bit different, and it might have made it more difficult. So we got lucky in a lot of ways, and there is some reason to subscribe to what astronomers would call the rare Earth theory. I don't know if I'm really not even qualified to have an opinion, to be honest. So I'm just trying to scope around and see what other smart people in astronomy think. But a lot of them do think that Earth is quite rare. They could be right, there may not. So in other words, there may be life out there, but ask yourself this. Do we think that every planet with life has life like we have? You look at our planet, we are like overabundance of life, of billions and trillions of unique genetic forms and forms of life in the water, on land, in the air, in cold weather, in warm weather. Like it's everywhere. Life is everywhere.
Yeah, we can't stop it. We can't stop it.
It's
we're
incredible.
trying. Yeah, we're trying to stop it. We're doing our best.
But there might be worlds that are like a desert world or like a kind of a frozen world where life is just eking it out. Like we've got a really great place. We have all this water. I don't know. I think if there was a species that came to check us out, maybe they're not here necessarily only for us. I mean, the planet itself. I keep coming across accounts of UFOs that are just sucking water out of major lakes or oceans. Why? Well, I think they're interested in our water. Maybe because the water is valuable. Maybe they want the water.
It's possible. It's possible. And here's another thing to contemplate. If we went, say we build a town on the moon. Maybe we already have, right? But let's say we do that. Mm-hmm. We're going to build in a bubble. We got to put in our own atmosphere. Right. Wearing a spacesuit is our atmosphere recreated on Earth inside of the spacesuit. That's how we survive. Makes sense, right? We would do the same thing on Mars. We would do this. All right. We would also do the same thing underwater. Even on our own planet, we've got to recreate what's up there.
That's right.
So if ET is coming to this planet, where is the best place to hang out? Underwater.
Very well could be.
Because you're going to take your own atmosphere with you. Your spaceship, right? Your ship that you're arriving on, that contains the atmosphere so you would right underwater.
I'm absolutely convinced that they've got bases down there, down in the ocean.
Yeah. And it's the easiest thing to do.
I would think under the ground in the ocean, like under the sea floor, I would guess, because you could do a lot more. Once you get under the sea floor, it's like, we've all driven under tunnels that are underwater. That's what they are. They're, you go under the floor. I mean, you're not going to have a little bubble in the ocean itself. It's too difficult. Just dig a tunnel. And why wouldn't they do that? Create their own secure environment that's nice and secluded from prying eyes of people 99.9% of the time. I do think that there's a lot of activity in the oceans. This book that I'm doing, I mean, let me just discuss it here, if you don't mind. I mean, I started getting into this USO project about a year and a half ago. Someone on my website, my God, I love my website. I've got the greatest members. I swear they are the smartest, the most coolest people. So one of them asked me about a sighting from the Aleutian Islands in the 40s, Adak Island. It's way, way out in the middle of nowhere. And so I did a little thing on that, and I just got interested. And I did a series on my website of video presentations, like lectures, basically, with some visuals and all of that, of USOs in the 40s, USOs in the 50s and the 60s. And the next thing I knew, like I was just in, and I thought, I'm going to bang this one out. And so that's what I've been working on pretty much. And I'm utterly amazed at the quantity and overall the quality of a lot of these water-based UFO reports that I have found. It's one of the reasons I've been data mining the New Fork database. The National UFO Reporting Center is so huge, and I don't really think a lot of people are, because it's not always easy to research through it. I mean, to be fair, it doesn't have a good search feature, and it's kind of hard to find things, but I got my way. I've got my way, and I have gone through that site, and there are an enormous number of just incredible bits of testimony in that, and then other sources. The late Carl Feint, who was a really exemplary USO researcher, had a website that's now defunct, but he collected a lot of cases there, and then there's a few other sources that I like to go to. But my God, I probably have over 400 specific cases at the moment that I've included, and there's probably another 100 to go before I'm done. So it just blows my mind.
Do you think the United States Navy and the NRO, and the reconnaissance satellites, do you think they've got these areas pinpointed?
Yeah, sure.
In the oceans.
Yep. I totally believe that. Absolutely, I believe that. Because here's the thing: a lot of the reports that you read are from ex-U.S. Navy guys. Those are the best reports. They're all different, and they're all exactly the same. They're all exactly the same in that they're almost all anonymous, nearly everyone. They'll almost all say, I can't give my name because I have to be very careful. I've got a wife and family to think about. Like, you hear that a lot with them. Even if the case is like 40 years old and the writer is like old, and it doesn't matter. Like they will also say it's been too long and people have to know about what happened. And then you hear the story. I have come across several U.S. Navy cases, including aircraft carriers and battle cruisers, in which it was alleged by the witness who wrote the account, with a lot of detail in every instance, where an object would be over a major U.S. naval warship and shut the entire ship down. I'm talking electronics, communication, weapons, for like 30 minutes. On at least 2 occasions that I'm remembering off the top of my head. 3 occasions. 2 aircraft carriers and a battle cruiser that come to my mind. One was the USS Franklin D. Roosevelt. One was the USS John F. Kennedy. The Roosevelt case happened in the 50s. The Kennedy case happened in 1971. And there was a battle cruiser. I just did this one. I just entered it. I can't recall which year. A little bit later. Shut down. Now, okay. If you are the United States Navy, there is nothing more important than your aircraft carriers. They are incredibly expensive. They're carrying nukes. They got 5,000 guys on them. Like, that's it. Anything that's going to shut down the communication of a U.S. aircraft carrier for up to 30 minutes, are you going to tell me that the United States Navy is not going to be all over that? They had to have been all over that. There is no question in my mind. Zero.
Real quick, before I let you go, what do you make of Bill Cooper's account when he was on the submarine? And this giant
Object
craft rose out of the water. Yeah.
I think I probably believe it. Cooper was kind of a weird guy. I mean, I never met him. I only read about him. I talked to a few people who did know him. He did not have a good reputation among people who knew him. That just has to be said. He was a drinker, and he was one of those mean drunks, from everything that I was told. So you had to watch out for him. And I really like the whole thing about Kennedy being shot by the driver. That was his whole thing. That was a load of BS. And he basically just lied, because what he said was, yeah, when I was in the Navy, we were briefed on the Kennedy assassination, and we were told that the driver did it. By the way, the driver's last name was Greer, William Greer. No relation to Dr. Stephen Greer. But it was complete nonsense by Cooper. It was a total lie. The only reason that he even got into the whole driver shot Kennedy thing is because I know this story. I can't remember the name. It was a Dutch filmmaker who was doing a thing on the Kennedy assassination back then. And he wanted funding support for his project. He sent a VHS to John Lear of the Kennedy assassination. It was like a third or fourth generation copy of a VHS tape. So the copy wasn't that great. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So Lear gets this. Like the guy wants money from Lear, and Lear's like, I don't want to give this guy money. But anyway, Cooper, this is in the late 1980s. Cooper hits the scene. He's talked about his USO sighting, which I do believe. But Cooper's talking about, to his credit, I mean, Cooper's talking about the Bilderbergers and the Jasons and all these subjects, all the conspiracy before most other people were. And I'm going to give the man some credit there. But then he says, so Lear sent him this little care package, which included that videotape. And that was when Cooper just went off. And he's like, yeah, this tape, Kennedy was killed by the driver. I was briefed on that. And it's like, no, that's total nonsense. When you look at a good copy of the Zapruder film, the driver did not kill Kennedy. Kennedy was killed in an assassination by multiple shooters. There's no question about that, but not by the driver.
No, the driver didn't even turn around. No, the driver was driving the car.
Cooper was a guy, I really think maybe he was one of these people who could just start to believe their own lies. I mean, there are people like that. But is there a core of truth? Yeah, probably. I mean, he became known on the baby internet back in those days because of that sighting. That was the first thing, as far as I know, that Bill Cooper wrote to the internet. I think it was 1987 or 88. And
on Paranet.
That's right. On
Paranet.
Alt, what was it? Alt alien visitors.
Paranet. It was alt.paranet.ufo. .ufo. Yeah, I think that's it.
So, yeah.
Man, that was the internet, by the way. Yeah. There was not much else going on at that time, but Paranet.
UFOs dominated the early internet. UFOs. Yeah, but anyway, I think Cooper's story was probably true. I'm inclined to believe that.
You and Tracy are coming out to Stairway to the Stars. I'm going to see you in a couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to this.
We are as well.
What are you going to be speaking about?
I got to put that all together. It will be on contemporary issues in the UFO field. So I will definitely do some kind of review of my take on the key things of 2023 and what we may look to expect in 2024 and maybe beyond. I will undoubtedly give my take on the serious, grave nature of the UFO phenomenon, which I do think is serious and grave.
And Tracy?
She is doing a lecture on, I was just talking with her about it just a couple of hours ago, related to remote viewing. It's her best lecture. It's her best lecture. I will say that. She gave a variation of it a couple of months ago in June, and it was stellar, outstanding. So, not just remote viewing. It's on different modalities of perception. I guess that might be one way to put it. So one thing she's really into, Tracy, is just fascinated by dreams. And I will say this, I don't think I've ever met someone who has such a vivid dream life as my wife. I mean, she's off the charts. But it's really remarkable to hear her talk about the dreams. She's had several dreams that I would say are definite precognitive dreams. In fact, she just had one, I think, earlier this week. That's what I think. And but the precogs aren't always of like I predicted the war in Israel. No, she doesn't have to, they're just of personal interest, but they're uncanny, they're they're interesting. And I think her idea is that like this is a quality that people can develop, and she's been developing really good protocols on how to do that. So she will talk about a lot of that. It's really good talk. It's really good talk.
I got to tell you, it's one thing. I just got back from Egypt, right, a few days ago, and I got there on the 2nd or 3rd of October. The war in Israel broke out on the 7th.
That's right.
So I'm in Cairo, right, 100 miles from the Israeli border.
Yeah,
right there. The Gaza Strip is on the Egyptian border, and this thing pops off. And you see this in movies, and you hear about this stuff, but it's a whole nother ball game to feel that atmosphere in person. It was.
You got to really hope that war does not expand, because this is a really dangerous situation.
It's a dangerous situation. And Richard, like I said, you see it on the news, you can watch the movie, whatever. But when you're there, the feeling, you can smell it, you can feel it, you can see it. The change. I mean, it was like the day before, life is normal. Now it's the Middle East, right? Where there's tension. There's been tension there for 5,000 years. And so I get that. It's a cultural thing that we just don't understand in the United States. It goes back a long time, a long ways. But from one day to the next, the difference, it was just insane. Yeah. And then right after that, I had to fly to Jeddah. Man, I went to Jeddah, went to Saudi Arabia. And dude, 3 days ago, I'm in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And,
wow.
and yeah. And so going through the airport, look, everybody, take this the wrong way and listen to what I am saying. I'm walking through the airport in Jeddah, and I am seriously the only American. I'm the only white. I am in the airport.
You were the white guy. You were the white guy in the airport.
For real. Okay. So looking around culturally, who is there, who is traveling, what's going on? We've got a war jumping off. We've got, all of this. And I'm in Saudi Arabia, and you could feel it. The security there was off the charts. And I could feel, I was being looked at.
Yeah. Saudis aren't too keen on the Americans these days anyway.
It was a trippy, man. I'm telling you, talk about keeping my head down, right? I wasn't loud doofus church there. But anyway, you could feel it. And coming back to the United States, it was one of those. It was bizarre. You're a study of history and geopolitical science, and this is what you do. This is what you went to school for. This is what you study. I got to tell you, man, I could have wrote a thesis on this one. It was a trip, and I'm kind of glad for the experience to feel it and to see it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you came.
It's a trip. I'll tell you more off the air. It's not really cool to talk about on the air. But with that, I'll see you in a couple of weeks in Las Vegas. Safe travels to you and Tracy. And we'll do our normal thing, break bread and hang out and talk. I can't wait to see you. Everybody come and hang out with Richard and I in Las Vegas, November 10th, 11th, and 12th. Richard, get some sleep. Thank you so much for staying up late with us.
Thank you, Jimmy. It was a pleasure.
Always is. Richard Dolan. Richard Dolan members, the links are below. Come and hang out with us in Las Vegas. Thank you so much for that, Richard. We don't have any show tomorrow night. I am in TV production for the next 3 days, and I'm going to be doing the same thing next week. So Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, fade to black. No fade to black on Thursday. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I'm shooting some TV stuff. All right. So I'm out of here. Everybody behave while I'm gone, and I will see you on Monday. Are we cool? We are. Thank you so much. All right. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Thank you to Dennis and Kevin. Thank you, John Assad. Thank you, Bill. You guys are the best. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2023 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, copied, or downloaded anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black of the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll see everybody on Monday. Until then, be safe. Go Beckley Teppy.